Surprisingly, this race has been enslaved arguably more than any other on Krynn. Welcome to another DragonLance Saga episode. My name is Adam, and today we are going to talk about Minotaurs. This is the first in a multi-episode series about the history, empires, and legacy of Minotaurs. I'm referencing DLR 2, Taladas, the Minotaurs game accessory, and Races of Krynn sourcebook for this information. If I leave anything out or misspeak, please leave a comment below. I am stunned at the history of the Minotaurs. First is the fact that they were slaves for the majority of their existence, running from their predecessor race, the ogres and Taladas, then from the Dwarves and Kal Thax, then from the ogres in Ansalon. This race seems to want nothing more than to rise to the High Ogre civilization that they sprung from and were rejected by, and it took millennia for them to get anywhere close to it. And then, only in Taladas until the War of Souls. The primary reason they fell into slavery is due to their underwhelming numbers, and this is due solely to the chaos of their creation with the Graygem. Now, their origins are shrouded in myth, though the reality is interesting in its own right, with no real need for myth. The Minotaurs relay that the god Sargaz transformed into a giant condor and gathered up all of the worthy ogres, transporting them to the eastern shores of Ansalon. He then granted them each his sign and transformed them into Minotaurs. Minotaurs teach that their horns are Sargaz's greatest gift to them, so as to have the means of defending themselves. A lot of good that did. This is quaint, but just about as believable as our own Abrahamic Ark myth. The reality behind their empires is vastly more interesting and deserving of their own rage and honor. Minotaurs believe in a brutal code centered on the idea of strength as the instrument of glory and respect. It is through strength that a Minotaur will rise through society to serve in the legions. Strength by which a Minotaur may lead his clan. Strength by which a Minotaur may captain a vessel. And strength by which an emperor may rule an empire. Would they believe this if they were granted their beginning? Or if they fought horn and hoof for it? No, the true beginnings are as follows. The gods created elves, ogres, and humans. Then the high god populated Krynn with animals. The elves claim that they were the first, but this flies in the face of the great civilizations the High Ogre society left behind, while the humans and elves lived off the land in smaller tribes. The Minotaurs contend that, in truth, the ogres were created first and populated Taladas initially. The remains of their grand civilization, along with the Bakali and Yagal, still remain there to this day. It is, of course, due to Reorx and his gnomes that the Minotaurs exist at all. The Graygem traveled over some small farmlands and fishing villages on the northwestern coast of Hosk, populated by ogres, and changed them into Minotaurs. This movement is encapsulated in their history as the Night of Cruel Transformation. Can you imagine the horror at being so irrevocably transformed out of nowhere? They were rightfully terrified and reached out to their ogre cousins for help to reverse this curse. The ogres reacted violently, as one might expect, and began raiding and enslaving this new impure breed. The Minotaurs lacked numbers to resist and fell in line for a time. This is another tradition we will see, as the Minotaur race is not stupid or weak. They pick their battles and strike when necessary. A Minotaur named Miseritha realized that the ogres were no match for her physically and began a killing spree, paying the ogres back for the slavery of her kin with their lives. She ordered the secret construction of sailing vessels, and when they were complete, the Minotaurs willing to leave continued with the killing spree, decimating entire villages of ogres. Not all Minotaurs left, and those that stayed were treated horrifically for the behavior of their kin. The ship sailed west and ended up on the seemingly deserted eastern shores of Ansalon. Not all of the group stayed, so some continued searching for another home. Those who remained set up small villages, naming their land Mythandris, the land of the bull, and quickly realized that they were on the land of the Dwarves' Kal Thax empire. The Minotaurs lacked any sense of numbers to resist the Dwarves and were subsequently enslaved yet again. They began to unite under a Minotaur named Ambiotine, who promised to lead them to freedom. This clandestine group began to assault villages with guerrilla tactics. They were so successful, the dwarves had no idea it was the Minotaurs killing them. A human black-robed wizard named Skythus deduced the truth and joined Ambiotine's cause just to sow discord in the Dwarven Empire. Skythus informed Ambiotine about a magical axe of the Emperor's that he promptly quested for. After defeating a green dragon, he used the axe to unite the Minotaurs and liberate them by decimating the much larger dwarven army that stood against them. It was because of the ruthlessness of this Minotaur army that Kal Thax fell. They wiped the Kal Thax Empire from the face of Krynn. Now, Sargas gave Ambiotine a vision establishing the Minotaur tenets of honor and strength. They turned east and established the first Minotaur kingdom with Ambiotine as their king. He married and had 2 sons, Mithas and Kothas, who trained in the art of war. He was so effective that when they passed the rite of initiation and Ambiotine and Skythus vanished, they were unable to defeat each other in the arena for the right to rule in their father's stead. They ended up splitting the kingdom in 2, and after a decade drew the attention of the ogres under the leadership of their great Khan. They were once again enslaved by ogres until they overthrew them after the Second Dragon War in 2645 pre-Cataclysm. This would not be the end of their enslavement, as the dwarves and then the ogres again would subjugate them until 2485 pre-Cataclysm. During the Third Dragon War, the Minotaurs would become slave soldiers to the Dark Queen and her warlord Krynn. With the rise of Istar and the proclamation of manifest virtue in 94 pre-Cataclysm, change would once again come to the Minotaurs. They were decimated by the Istarians and Selenic Knights, losing their power and even their kingdoms. And then the Cataclysm hit. As other races and empires fell, the Minotaurs seized what they saw as a sign of favor by their gods. They sailed across the Blood Sea and re-established their empire. The seafaring of their tribe learned of a new land to the east, ripe for conquering, not knowing it was the very land they fled from millennia before. Mat Oth Keithka, a descendant of Ambiotine, led the expedition back to Taladas and came ashore to raid Thenol. They never returned, and as others followed and landed near Christophan in southern Hosk, led by Aragaz the Brutish, they subjugated the humans, and he proclaimed himself emperor and began a new empire all through near Styrilla. Thus, the League of Minotaurs was established. Again, this is just the beginning of the Minotaurs. They would come to find success with their empires in both Taladas and Ansalon, but it would be hundreds of years after the Cataclysm. After their first attempt at taking Sylvanesti around 2335 pre-Cataclysm, the elves were added to the growing list of enemies of the Minotaur Empire. They would eventually settle the score of Sylvanesti killing their emperor. It wouldn't be until after the War of Souls that the League of Minotaurs and Taladas would begin to fracture and crumble, with the return of Maladar Ad-Desh, the mad sorcerer king from millennia before, and at the same time the Blood Sea Minotaurs would realize their expansion into Sylvanesti, now called Ambien. But those are tales for another day, because that is all the time I have to talk about the beginnings of Minotaurs. I hope you enjoyed the information. Do you enjoy the half-man, half-bull race? Did you know about the Minotaur's beginnings? And finally, have you ever played a Minotaur in a role-playing game? Leave a comment below. I'd like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, remember... Wait! I can speak their tongue.